Okay, so I've got a couple of slides here, essentially to kind of set the stage, and it follows very nicely with everything we've heard from Rick and Mario and from Jordan this morning. After that, we'll go into a series of questions with our panelists. So let's go ahead. There we go. Okay. Again, 30,000 foot view, trying to get everyone on the same page. We've got to recognize, and I know you do recognize, that the herd bull influences overall fertility. Okay, that poor bull with poor bull fertility can cause loss to the calf crop. Okay, bulls that have low fertility, they have structural issues, or low libido, reduce the percentage of calf crop weaned, and weaning weight is influenced by the bull. Okay. These are kind of no-brainer types of statements, just getting us to think about the possibility of moving towards artificial insemination, okay? We've got some data here. This was originally presented by Dave Patterson back in 2006. And this is cumulative calving percentage, University of Missouri Thompson Farm. And you can see percent of calves born on one axis and day of the calving season on another axis. And essentially we have three different groups: a natural service group, 3 years worth of data, estrus detection and AI, and then fixed time AI, there's 3 years worth of data. And essentially what we take home from this is, depending upon day of calving season, we go up and we have the greatest number or percentage of calves born from our fixed time AI group, then our estrus detection and AI group, and then our natural service group. Okay? Keeping that in our back pocket, we've heard this morning many times so far, the advantages of calving early as a heifer. Okay, and certainly Mario and Rick talked about this. Okay, we have heifers remaining in the herd on one axis, we have number of calves born on another axis, and then we have periods of time when these heifers calve, either the first day to the 21st day, 22 to 42, 43 or more. And these are animals that were at US mark, over 16,000. Come on back. There it is. And we can see the different lines. And essentially I've summarized it in that red box. Heifers that calve in the first 21 days of their first calving season remain in the herd to produce a 5th plus calf. So there's a longevity aspect to that. You be early, you calve early, you get pregnant again early, you calve early again, and so on. Now, of course, this goes on to the actual calf. So advantages of calving early as a heifer: we have weaning weight in kilos on one axis, we have the calf, number of calves, first calf, second calf, third calf, etc. It's the same data set from US mark, and we have the same periods. Summary is, heifers that calved in the first 21 days of their first calving season weaned a heavier calf, okay, in each of the first 6 calving seasons of their life. So you could say, yeah, you know, but that's research data. It's not data that's out there in the field. Well, let's go out to the field and look at field data. Okay, this is commercial beef heifers, over 2,000 in South Dakota. What did they find in this data set? Heifers that calve earlier stay in the herd longer and produce more pounds of calf during their lifetime than heifers calving later. Where was the break point? We have heifers that calve in the first 21 days of their first calving season remain in the herd to produce a 3rd plus calf. And we can look at other data in other areas, research or commercial data, and this holds true. So the idea is that It's not only implementing a technology such as artificial insemination, it's trying to optimize when our animals get pregnant and optimize when they calve so we can optimize returns, hopefully. Okay? Now, what can help us do that? Certainly, Dr. Thomas did a very nice job talking about the different protocols, is synchronization. And why would we want to add synchronization with artificial insemination? Because females that respond to synchronizations conceive earlier. And that fits everything that we've been talking about. And then calves are older and heavier at weaning. Okay. So that's it for the introductory portion. What I'll do is I'll hand over the mic now to each of our panelists. They will introduce themselves and give a short snippet about what they do on a daily basis in their career. And then we'll start with our first question.
Thank you. I'm Bobby Strecker. I'm a district sales manager for ABS, the Nebraska, Colorado, Wyoming area. I guess on a day-to-day, work with our independent representatives there across those 3 states, and then working with producers, whether it be synchronization protocols or genetic selection there.
Good morning. My name is Brandon Miller. My wife and I live up in Custer County, just about an hour and a half northeast of here. We're raised our 3 kids, and as of about 4 weeks ago, we're officially empty nesters. So looking forward to some flexibility in our schedules now. So my career path has taken a few different turns. Right out of college, after I earned my animal science degree, I went to Genex Cooperative full time, and I covered Western Nebraska, managing a sales team in Western Nebraska. So my responsibilities there for 4 years were to educate cattlemen on the genetic offering that Genex had to offer, along with recommending and synchronization protocols and recommending and providing services and artificial insemination services. So over the years, so today I continue to be an independent distributor for Genex and provide AI services for local cattlemen in my community. But over the years, I've held roles in feedlot production. So I was with a large cattle feeding operation in central Nebraska for about 10 years, where I managed the backgrading program, had cattle procurement responsibilities, and also managed a data analytics team there. Today, I'm an egg lender for Farm Credit Services of America out of Brokenbow, and again, continue to provide AI services to our local community.
Thanks, Brandon. I'm John Herrick. I work with Select Sires, live in Amherst, Nebraska, central Nebraska. And so for all of you that aren't from Nebraska, welcome. I appreciate the task force bringing this meeting to Nebraska, and glad we had such a good turnout. My role with Select Sires is kind of a dual role. I work with our Nebraska and Iowa sales force. I have about 7 to 10 independent representatives that work with me in terms of helping commercial customers set up breeding programs. One of the things I enjoy is working in the heifer development area with people that buy heifers in the sandhills of Nebraska, breed and develop them, and resell them to commercial herds across the country. In addition to working with our Select Sires Co-op, I also work with our beef department on sire acquisition. And so I get a little bit of the sire and bull side, and I think that's kind of unique that I can interact with our commercial industry, be breeding cows, but yet work with our purebred breeders on the sire selection side, and what sires are relevant, traits they're looking for, and some of the things that we do that way. So hopefully I've been able to work with Don and others in the industry from that side, and I've learned a great deal from them, and love the beef industry, love cattle breeders. I tell them it's the cattle and people combination that make this thing what it is. So hopefully we can answer some of these questions for you.
Okay, very good. So the first question is to all of you. And the question is just factors you're interested in when initially discussing implementing. So it's a new customer. What are 2 factors you're interested in? And we'll start with.
Okay, so for me, the first question I ask, typically it's over the phone, is what do you want to accomplish with AI? And you ask 10 different producers, you might get 15 different answers. But Typically, it's all the above, right? But if you kind of narrow it down to what's your number one goal, what do you want to improve on in that cow herd, then from there we can make a selection on which bulls we can go after and mate to those cows. So that's kind of the thing one. Thing two is then the next step is to do an on-site visit. I want to see the facilities and I want to see the cow herd. Because if there's any gaps at all to fill in lack of facilities or labor force, or any gaps to fill in nutrition or to get the cows, an adequate body condition score, hopefully we have time to fill those gaps.
I think kind of double facet for me, and I agree with Brandon. If the customer calls or we talk, I definitely want to do an on-farm visit, and when we visit that place, not only look at their cattle, but look at the facilities. But I think an important question for me in that deal is when I do customer meetings across the country, I often ask this question: what are your production goals? And I would like to admit that probably 70 to 80% of the people I ask do not have a production goal. My question is, we sell calves the third Wednesday of February, and I want them to weigh as much as they can, so when they go across the scale, and I get that a lot. But are you maternal or terminal multiplier? Are we doing more a precision type mating system? Are we looking to just kind of balance and keep between the lines that you can have, not only replacement heifers, but have steers that put you pounds without giving carcass merit? And so I think I try to identify what their production goal is, and then see what the facilities are, and then last we bring the genetics that we hope move them in the direction of that goal.
Yeah, I'd say I agree with Brandon and John and all those, and probably just reiterate. A lot of times, one of the first questions in visiting with them is really what's your patience level and how long are you going to be in this for? I mean, are you looking to kind of just AI heifers and have a quick turnaround and resell them as bred? So your selection criteria might be more focused on some fertility or maybe on some cavities on the heifers. And so just understanding those, I think certainly helps just with those conversations going forward. I'm pretty adamant about getting in the pickup and riding through the cattle. A lot of you guys and producers. I mean, that's what you love to do and very passionate about that. And so if we're going to talk about bulls before any of that genetic selection happens, I want to see your cattle, because what you envision trying to create in my mind might be different, but if I can see it, maybe it's a bull that's in the back of the catalog. It's not talked about as much. Maybe that one really fits you in terms of your mold and what you want to do. It might not be the top seller or the top bull for registrations, but it does the most for you and your program and what you want to do.
Very good. Okay, so let's flesh out a little bit. What is the importance? It sounds like a dumb question, but what is the importance of facilities? And what can you offer with upgrading, renting, leasing, those types of situations to make an AI implementation happen? We'll start with John.
Well, for me, I mean, I think we've talked about facilities, and I think um, people do not like to sort cattle in extra time. I wish there was a seeder that did 5 different things, but it's not here right now. And so we have awesome technology, but I think especially if you're doing cows versus heifers, you have to bring in sort, and we have to do a 2 or 3 time system through the chute. However, I don't think AI is as hard as it used to be. I think if we would ask our customer have AI once or twice, they will tell you this is not as bad as what I thought it was going to be when you took me down this path. And so, we use barns, and I'm sure Brendan and Bobby do as well. I can sit here and say in 1998, Larry Rowden from ABS talked me into buying my first AI barn from Marvin Large, and it was probably one of the best investments I made. He said, John, if you want to have an AI barn, it's kind of like having a tractor to farm, but you got to have enough business to go through that. So that was a great deal for us. Some of you in the crowd may use those in terms of how the cattle handle. We also have a fair amount of people that get along like squeeze chutes if they manage the cattle right, how they handle the cattle in and out of the chute and in the system. I think both those systems are very comparable. and it's just what fits the operations that you have. I think that the trouble that you can get into, from my point of view, is if you decide you're going to mass AI 200 cows, and we get there and alleyways and facilities aren't suited, the cattle are stressed, the people are stressed, and it just filters on down the line. And so, plan and a coordinated plan in terms of the people that are going to be helping. I mean, all three of us companies have independent reps that are on farm faces, that provide the service, and we have the equipment that we can provide them. And if we need more people, usually we have that networking system that we can come in and provide that service for us. I think the last thing we want you to do is dive in a program that overwhelms you, because we want you to have successful results.
Good job, John. I think he covered a lot of the basic points there. Facilities, I mean, it doesn't have to be anything brand new or fancy. In terms of that, I mean, a lot of it goes into timeliness. And I think also if you are starting out trying to implement a synchronization or an AI program, if you have X amount of cows, that first year, it doesn't mean you have to do all of them. Right? If facilities, if it's something that's a work in progress, maybe select something, a group of cows, maybe that are your better producers, maybe utilizing some, sex semen to make females out of that group of cows. And so using those facilities, making sure they're easy to work with in those facilities, you're able to move through them timely. Like John had mentioned, we have a phenomenal group of independent representatives, really across the U.S. and all the companies do. And a lot of those take pride in terms of full service, whether it be coming in and helping with synchronization, whether it maybe is with portable panels. A lot of our guys would have a breeding barn or have access to one to utilize there for the projects. Silencer chutes are growing as well. It just seems to be, maybe a little bit less wear and tear on the body of the breeder. And things like that there too. And so, facilities are different for everybody, making sure that the cattle work well through them. You can do it timely, and then also they're safe. Okay?
Yeah, not a lot to add there. I'll just kind of reiterate a few things that John and Bobby both mentioned. Number one is reducing stress is probably the key with facilities. Dr. Funston put a couple slides up there on the impact that stress can have on artificial insemination. And I think that's key, is reducing stress with good facilities. Now, to Bobby's point, we could fill in some gaps if facilities aren't quite up to snuff. We could bring in portable panels. One project I did was 200 heifers out on pasture. An old gentleman didn't have a labor force at all, no facilities. We filled that gap with labor and facilities for that individual. So, not a lot else to add there.
Okay, very good. So this next question has to do with the idea of, we're in a 100% natural service herd, and this herd wants to go to artificial insemination. Talk a little bit about the use of estrus synchronization with natural service to serve as a bridge or an intermediate step until implementation of AI. Where do you see that fitting, if you see that fit? Bobby.
So I guess utilizing the synchronization with some natural service, like Sandy went over, there's a lot of different protocols in there, and one that we've had some success with maybe trying to get into it, maybe lower some costs from the cedar standpoint, is the Select Sync 2 protocol. Utilizing some natural service bulls in there, and then following up with AI at the end. We've had some good results there, just in terms of getting cattle pregnant, and trying to do that quicker. Now, one of the first questions, I guess, if they're going from natural service and trying to AI is what currently is the calving window? I mean, have you been, diligent about condensing the cattle or the calving window there? Because if you're going to implement AI on a mass breed or fixed time AI there, it is better if they're more condensed already. And so maybe it's 2 different groups you're starting with, synchronizing 2 different ones. Maybe some of those you're going to synchronize, but they're so far out from a counting window standpoint that you turn them directly with bulls and maybe don't AI them. And so try and jumpstart them to get them caught up that way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that kind of the key question there is, what is that calving window? And if it's pretty wide and your goal is to AI, you're probably going to want to have that intermediate step, use some synchronization protocols, go ahead and throw the bulls in there, maybe tighten up that calving window for 1 year, and then take a look at introducing AI the following year. We've used that strategy before and it worked out really well.
Thanks, Bobby. I'm glad you got to start this one, and I get a follow up. But what I would have to add on that from a natural service, and Joe, you kind of had it in your slides there at the beginning. If we can utilize synchronization to start finding those females that are calving early in the season, that are the upfront, if you will, the upfront third, the upfront half, and find those females and identify them, and know that those are the females that you might want to implement in the next step of a breeding program. I think that's where the use of some kind of synchronization and natural would work good. One of the cautions that would probably be with that is, if you are using synchronization and natural service, where do you lie from a bull power standpoint in terms of age of bull, number of bulls, area to be covered by, into where if things are working well on your synchronization, you may overload what you have for bull power, identify those females that are in heat, but there was just too many for the bulls to cover. So make sure if you're doing that. But I do think there are advantages to jump starting cattle, getting them in a program, and finding those that come in heat early and breed early in the calving season and putting them at the top end of your herd, whichever breeding program you choose.
Okay, very good. So let's get to the stage, if you will, where we're talking about implementing AI, or we're going to implement AI in the upcoming breeding season. And the question is, who will perform the AI? Because we certainly have people that are taught. We have do-it-yourselfers, we have independent reps, we have other reps that can come in. Talk a little bit about the importance of the AI technician, heat detection, and following protocols.
Well, I guess when the first step comes, and teaching AI schools and such, there's a lot of students that leave and think they're ready to go breed a couple hundred head the next day, and I always caution them with that. I mean, it takes time, it takes repetition. So one of the first questions, if you're planning on breeding your own, is how comfortable you are. What's the protocol you're using? What's the size and scale that you're looking to do? If you're looking to heat detect on 10 head, and let's say they're going to be spread out over a couple days, maybe you're more comfortable with that situation. Again, our rep force is spread out pretty evenly throughout the U.S., and a lot of them are very competent and very good at covering large numbers, and have the team that is ready and prepared to do so. And so it really just ultimately depends on the scale, and then what's the protocol you're using. If you're looking to heat detect and then mass breed at the end, or if you're looking for one fixed time mass breed, you're going to need different personnel for that to cover.
Yeah, so to add on, following the protocol, I always recommend following the protocol to a T. The slides we've been looking at this morning, I know some operations are kind of wanting to vary from that a little bit, or accidentally vary from that, and the results are never successful. So protocol, follow that to a T. And I agree with what Bobby said on building confidence early on, right? So walk before you can run. Don't jump into a bunch of cows or a bunch of heifers right after you learn how to AI. A lot of times, I'll get a phone call just to kind of go assist that first project. So maybe they're AI on their own cows or own heifers, and I'll go support that and make sure that they're confident in what they're doing.
Yeah, good job, guys. I don't have a ton to add to that, but I also teach AI schools, and I tell my students at the AI school, You don't want to overload yourself. There's two things that are terrible to do when you leave an AI school, and that's not go do any for 5 to 10 years, or to go out and dive into 200 cows that you don't even know what you're getting into and not have a plan. And I said both of those things probably can not be great in terms of an AI program. So I tell my students, if you're a beginning AI person, heat detection is the best thing that you can do. Yeah, use a number that's adequate, do some heat detection, and spread those animals out. And the more experience you get, the more you can move. I totally believe that if you're doing a mass AI program, experienced technicians along with the facilities go into that. So as you're planning a breeding program, I know the only way you gain is experience is breeding them, but start on animals in heat and then work to mass breeding programs and have a team. I kind of know the number that I can do, and if not, I have to call in a second person or a third person depending on the time frame that we're synchronized and the cattle that we're going to do. I also printed this off maybe for you, Sandy, but we make the Repro Task Force. I think one of the best tools they've implemented is the Sync Planner. We make about 100 of these a year for our customers, where we actually will have a visit with them and make their synchronization and breeding plan. I can send an email, I can put it on your phone, I can print it off and put it in your feed truck if you're feeding MGA. We can do that. That has helped my commercial guys a lot. To a lot of us in the room, we know what to do it and when a day. If I'm a farmer and I have 10 employees trying to send 10 different directions, this is a very helpful tool. So we use the Sync Planner through the Repro Task Force, so we thank them for putting that together to give to our customers. But I've also found, and I don't know for these guys, but in the last 2 years, we've probably had more mistakes given in protocols where they have the right drugs and they're giving them at the wrong time, maybe due to untrained people going to the fridge and getting the repro stuff out of the fridge. And so you've got a lot invested to get to this point, not only in the females, but to get them to this point. So wrong drug, wrong day can really set you back in a heartbeat. So attention to detail. My best reps are very detail oriented.
One last thing of, we talk about the technician a lot, and I always say, just as important in terms of your team, the person who handles the semen. That probably has just as much or more of an effect. This is my own estimated data, but I always say 95% of the technicians out there, if they are competent and comfortable, put the semen in the same place. And so the person handling that semen, okay, it's not something necessarily that's trained in 5 minutes. It does take time. Somebody that's very disciplined and attention or detail oriented is very key there.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's go back to, and John, we'll start with you, that what was mentioned earlier, this idea about a plan. What's the plan when you're initially talking with someone who wants to implement AI? So my question is, what's the sire selection plan? How do you address that? How do you probe to try and find the answer? And someone, I can't remember, said the third Wednesday of the month we go to the sales yard. But flesh that out a little bit more. How, do you talk about replacements, terminal crosses, balanced approach, how long you're going to be in business, what?
I guess I said that, so I got to start here and go. But there's so much technology in the box now for sire selection. All three of us companies and the other companies included, we all have the same tools in the toolbox in terms of genomics and EPDs and places to go get the bulls. But I think it truly comes down to, are you an innovative commercial guy that has set cows in your herd that you want to make a terminal cross on to find those? Or are you one of those that has, for example, a maternal multiplier herd? Because those bulls can be very different. And all of us in our sire books have bulls that are at each end of that spectrum, rather they're terminal. I would say in central Nebraska, a lot of our customers now are probably backing off the elite and wanting balance. And they're saying, maybe I don't need the top 2% of this bull for this trait or two. maybe find me a bull that has some longevity, some function, some phenotype, and let's put balanced data, and maybe he's in the top 20% for 13 different traits, and he's going to keep me, if you will, between the guards. I would say, and these guys may differ, but in my particular area, our AI customers are trying to make females to keep back in their herd for the next generation. And their byproduct would be the steers and the carcasses, of which we don't want to give up. I think the beef industry has done a tremendous job with marbling. I think if you look at what cattle are doing on the rail, they're marbling well, and now we're making them huge. And so where does that turn? But I think one of the key functions that as commercial cow-calf guys we need to be thinking is function, fertility, and longevity. And so what are those things? We know that reproduction is one of the most important things for profitability in a commercial cow-calf operation. And so my customers will say, the customer always makes the final decision on which bull in my programs, but I'm going to put them bulls together that move them in that direction, hopefully upon experience.
Yeah, good job, John. One thing that I might add there is, understanding the marketing plan on the males. So once we understand what the marketing plan is, are you selling the calves right off the cow? Are you retaining ownership on those to background for a while and then sell them as yearlings? Or are you retaining ownership all the way through to slaughter? So that helps drive that decision-making process too, along with the maternal merit that might be in play if they're keeping the replacement females. For some operations, it's strictly, I just want calving these bulls, and I don't really care how they perform. I just want them light, poor, and easy. Other operations are willing to push that a little bit to get more pounds at weaning time. So it's kind of talking through, what's your objective, what do you want to accomplish here, and then make a decision on mating selection from there.
Yeah, I think those two covered it really well, and John really agree with the idea of a lot of producers out there know, now the quality and balance, certainly has a lot of value in trying to cover all ends of the spectrum there. It's a fun time from a genetic standpoint, really, in the cattle industry. I mean, we're sitting at a time where markets are high, and we have just the technology out there to do a lot of really good things. One of the really growing things and quickly growing things, I guess we see is the utilization of sex semen. And ultimately it's, we like the quality and balance, but maybe it's somebody where, we're looking to capitalize and add some pounds, add some weaning weight, add some terminal merit, but we still need females. We're at a size where we want to retain and build our females, not maybe always purchase them. And so we've really seen a lot of people try and be disciplined in terms of their selection, using male sex semen, using female, and here over the past couple years, with the use of some protocols and the timeliness there, we're seeing very similar conception rates there with sexed and conventional semen, and so it has a lot of value, and it's really fun going into those programs that have been using this and seeing a very consistent set of steer calves over here that is maybe 70% of their calf crop, and a phenomenal set of 20% of their calf crop over here of females that were made for their program, utilizing maybe, cattle that offer some longevity and functionality. So.
Very good. So I want to switch gears a little bit, and if I had a different hat, I'd put a different hat on, because I do a lot of my work in the dairy world. And as everyone knows, there's a lot of beef on dairy out there. So, Brandon, we're going to start with you. We're talking $1,400, $1,500 day-old calves in my area, and dairy producers. And we have people feeding 50,000 calves. So where are we headed? What does that fit into a business plan? How does that fit into consideration of lending? All these types of things, or offering of services.
Well, obviously in central Nebraska, we don't have a ton of dairies where I'm at, but what you're talking about is the influence that beef on dairy genetics have on the beef supply. And absolutely, it's had a dramatic impact on it, because, right now, the U.S. cow herd, the beef cow herd is at all-time low, well, lowest since the 1940s, I guess, probably. But yet, but beef production is still maintaining because of the beef on dairy influence and increased carcass weights. Now I've asked that same question as well. What's kind of the, where does this max out at? And the question I get the answer I get from the dairy industry a lot of times is we're probably about there. And maybe you're hearing something different, professors, but the individuals I talk to is, now it's kind of time to start dairy on dairy again. That's what I'm hearing anyway.
I think it has changed the AI industry substantially in the last 5 to 7 years, and at Select Sires we've seen a huge increase in dairies making. I think those dairies, first and foremost, fertility, and so they want those cows pregnant and in the system. So I think even though you're a beef on dairy breeding program, I think the fertility of those bulls still play a role in what those dairies are doing. So I would say fertility first. Calving needs next on beef on dairy. I think that just to how resources work and how calves are born, they want a live calf. So I would say that falls second. And then third, it becomes terminal carcass merit. So what traits do you select for? The cool thing in beef on dairy is you can kind of limit that selection pressure to terminal. So you can start concentrating on how those bulls fit and complement the dairy that they're being used in. But I think first and foremost, those dairies have those calves in a program already, and the program, the supply chain, if you will, is telling those dairy producers what kind of genetics that they want those cattle to be, and then it's our job to find, produce, and get bulls that are high fertility to make that work in a dairy. I will say that from a beef on dairy standpoint, the consistency of the product is really good. In terms of it's consistent. A lot of them, I was here at Nebraska Sustainable Beef, and there was 50 carcasses in a row, very uniform carcasses, and I'm a beef on beef guy, but I do think that I don't see them really as competition. I see them as changing what was a black and white steer is now a black steer, and if we're as beef producers are passionate about being in the beef business, we should use that competition to make us better.
Yeah, and John kind of ended there on probably the one thing I would add is maybe the number of head. Total head count really doesn't change, but maybe the quality of the product there on the dairy side has changed a little bit. And so, one thing I think visiting with beef producers there and maybe the fear of the beef on dairy is, a lot of the guys, if you are, let's say genetically or reproductively trying to better yourself and better your program, you're going to continue to get better, okay? On the dairy side, they're not selecting for carcass merit or efficiency terminal value on their dairy cows. And so, one thing about genetics, right, is it's a cumulative input, right? So you're building and still bettering your cow side using bulls to still continue to better them. So you should always continue to increase and shouldn't have to worry about, I guess, the effects some of the beef on dairy genetic side.
Okay, so we're rounding the corner here and heading toward lunch, so this will be the last official question. In general, what's in the crystal ball for each of you? What do you see that you think is the next thing? And I'm going to seed that, if you will. Do you see fresh semen being used in the future in the beef industry?
I think right now in terms of a crystal ball, I think a lot of people, it seems, looking to specialize more, utilization there of some sex semen in terms of your program, specializing to add some value, capture from some additional revenue, maybe through steer calves, and still being able to keep the maternal influence, some longevity, some functionality there in your cow herd with the maternal side. I think the fresh semen conversation is very interesting, and I guess right now, living parts of the U.S. maybe have better access to it. The shipping and logistics side is probably pretty hard, where UPS maybe only delivers once a week. or twice a week in your area, and just given location of certain, studs and whatnot, shipping probably becomes more of the limiting factor there.
Yeah, I guess what does the future hold? Technology, probably, right? Look how far we've come in the last just handful of years and the advancements in technology. So to add on what Bobby said, I could see a lot of specialization as well. Targeting matings to target females, but then also diversifying that and having your male selection as well too. So just using technology to advance the operation is probably where I see the future.
Yeah, I'm going to change gears just a little bit as far as some of the technology that I see is in the last 4 or 5 years. DNA technology has really been huge in terms of you can be a believer or not a believer, but I think it's a tool that's going to be here to stay both in dairy and beef, and probably the beef people have followed the dairy people a little bit in terms of what we're doing. We think DNA technology is definitely pointing an arrow for us and limiting risk in bulls that we select. But I think there's much more in the toolbox that DNA can offer as we go in the future. When I started in the AI industry, I would have had no idea that we would be using a tissue sample to help us select cattle and do with where we are headed now. So I think the science of DNA will continue to aid in what all of us do in the beef industry. I think that I think if DNA starts to do health traits and I had somebody tell me the other day that there's so many traits when they open up any of our sire books and they look at a bull, there's so much information that as a commercial guy, they're almost overwhelmed. And they're like, Angus should be made to take one trait away when they add one. And I was like, that's not going to come. You're going to get more lines in your sire directory because our toolbox is getting bigger. And for me, it's like when you walk up to that toolbox, which drawer you open and which wrench you take out for the job that you want to go. So I think DNA technology, I think it's going to filter to our commercial producers via the seed stock that they are buying, whether it's via AI or natural service. And then I think that will aid in their production goal that they're headed in. So that would be my futuristic ball, is we might be looking at some DNA test that says they're BVD resistant or something like that, in addition to some of the other technologies we have. In the future, we just look at the sheer economics of this deal right now in terms to what cattle are worth here. A month ago, there was one steer and sold in South Dakota for $4,000 or something like that. You all heard the crazy number, but semi-load of corn. So the day that we had one steer bring worth more than a semi-load of corn gets to be interesting from what times that we're in. But I think just due to the way that this herd rebuild looks, with people coming back to the ranch and where we're at, the amount of capital that it's going to take to be successful in running this, doing a breeding program, maintaining these females. I think I heard on a market show the other day, when you had a bred heifer bred, it usually took 3 to 4 calves to return her back, and it's now just under 2 today. So we've cut that in half, share of what these animals are worth today. So I think husbandry management, technology through breeding programs is going to keep you up front as we discuss those things.
Okay, very good. Well, let's thank the panel.